Everything's done in slow motion. The garage door opens, the bus drives in, the door shuts, and everything is pitch black. You feel it. It sinks in. This dread feeling. You're literally buried alive. Left 24/7 in a concrete steel cage. A sarcophagus underground. It's the death penalty on a payment plan. This is ADX Florence, the ALCATRAZ of the Rockies. America's only federal Supermax prison. It houses approximately 400 of the nation's most dangerous criminals. Terrorists, serial killers, gang leaders, men who killed guards in other prisons. But here's what most people don't know. The punishment inside these walls isn't just isolation. According to court documents from the landmark Cunningham v. Bureau of Prisons lawsuit filed in 2012, it's a systematic psychological breakdown that begins the moment you arrive and doesn't stop for years. People are there to die. It's a tomb. A mausoleum. Over the next 40 minutes, you'll witness the documented timeline of what happens to a human mind in complete isolation. From the first 24 hours, to the first month, to the breaking point that comes later. Multiple former inmates. Court testimony. Medical records. All pointing to the same truth. But what you'll discover near the end is why some men never leave their cells at all. And why, according to a 2014 Amnesty International investigation, this facility may violate international law. January 10, 1995. ADX Florence officially opened its doors. It was built for one purpose: to contain prisoners who were too dangerous, too violent, or too likely to escape from any other facility in America. The facility sits on 37 acres in Fremont County, Colorado. Part of a larger prison complex that has earned the area a grim nickname: Colorado's correctional capital. This was designed for criminals desperate enough to murder corrections officers or other inmates in the hopes of being sentenced to death. These are men with absolutely no concern for human life. Each cell is 7 feet by 12 feet. Made entirely of poured reinforced concrete. Everything is concrete. The bed, the desk, the stool, even the shelf. It's just the harshest place you've ever seen. Nothing living. Not so much as a blade of grass anywhere. The toilet shuts off automatically if blocked to prevent flooding. The shower runs on a timer. For minutes. There's one window. A 4-inch slit positioned so high that in certain units inmates cannot see anything but a small piece of sky or a brick wall. But the architecture is only the beginning. The real danger at ADX isn't the concrete. It's what happens to your mind when you can't see another human face for weeks at a time. When the only voice you hear is your own. In a moment, you'll hear what former inmates describe as the first signs of breaking. But first, you need to understand the arrival. Let's follow what we know from multiple documented cases. Jack Powers arrived on October 2, 2001. He had assaulted a guard at another prison. Everything is pitch black. You fall into certain types of despair when you're literally buried alive. Travis Dusenbury arrived that same year. According to his testimony, the first thing that hits you is the silence. At other prisons, even isolated ones, you could see a highway. See the sky. But at ADX, you can't see nothing. You know the minute you get there you won't see any of that, not for years and years. Eric King arrived in 2014 after throwing Molotov cocktails at an empty federal building. He spent nearly 2 years at ADX before his release. New arrivals are placed in what inmates call the boxcar cells. You're handed a small bag of basic supplies. The steel door closes. And then nothing. Most documentaries about ADX end there. They show you the cell and move on. But what happens next is a documented pattern of psychological deterioration that follows a predictable timeline. Week 1 looks different than month 3. Month 3 looks different than year 1. And year 5 is when some inmates start doing things no one could imagine. According to testimony from multiple former inmates, there are 3 unwritten rules at ADX. Rules that determine whether you slowly lose your mind or find a way to survive. A 2014 Amnesty International report found that ADX prisoners routinely go days with only a few words spoken to them. One inmate kept a journal. He recorded every conversation. Most lasted under 20 seconds. You need anything? Door closes. According to the lawsuit testimony, some inmates reported going entire weeks without speaking to another human being. I think most people take it for granted that they are human. But when you get to ADX, you realize that being human isn't a birthright. Former inmates describe a phenomenon where days blur into weeks into months. According to court documents, there are no meaningful distinctions between days. Every morning the steel door opens. Food slides through the slot. Door closes. Every afternoon 1 hour of recreation. Alone. In a concrete pen. The recreation cage allows approximately 10 steps in a straight line. The ceiling is barred. You can see a piece of sky, if you're lucky. Then back to your cell for 23 hours. Repeat. For years. ADX operates on a step-down program. According to Bureau of Prisons policy documents, it's designed as a 2-year process. But according to prisoners, the system is designed around one word. Compliance. Be compliant, lucky, or necessary to fill a quota, and you will receive more privileges. Be non-compliant, unlucky, or present any resistance, and you will be buried in ADX until you're released, or you find an innovative way to beat them or die. So those are the rules. Silence. Compliance. But what happens when you follow all the rules and your mind still breaks anyway? That's where the Real story begins. Here's what most people don't know about ADX. It's not just a prison. It's a facility that was systematically violating the constitutional rights of mentally ill inmates for over a decade. 11 prisoners sued the federal government. They alleged that inmates diagnosed with serious mental illnesses were being denied adequate mental health treatment, and that the conditions at ADX were actively making their mental health worse. When Cunningham arrived at ADX in 2001, something happened that court documents reveal was part of a disturbing pattern. He was taken off his psychiatric medication. Inmates who arrived with diagnoses like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder were being re-diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. Because antisocial personality disorder is not considered amenable to psychiatric intervention, which means no medication, no counseling, no treatment. His behavior predictably worsened. He was cited for possessing weapons, assaulting corrections officers, refusing to leave his cell. For this, he spent 5 years in even more restrictive conditions. His treatment was workbooks and programs through his television. John J. Powers was repeatedly transferred for psychiatric stabilization. Each time he was medicated, then returned to ADX, where the medication was stopped. He described cutting off his earlobes, chewing through a finger, smashing his head open trying to inject his brain with bacteria-laden fluid. I didn't think I was ever gonna come out of there alive. I went through the flames. I went to the edge of the pits. By 2012, the evidence was overwhelming. The government tried to dismiss it 14 separate times. What happened next changed everything. Let's talk about what actually happens to the human mind in isolation. Not theory. Documented medical evidence. You're just shut off from the world. You feel it. The effects can begin within days. Early symptoms include anxiety, panic attacks, difficulty concentrating. The first few months are when you develop coping mechanisms. Some men pace their cells. 7 feet. 7 feet back. Others talk to themselves. Some yell through air vents. After 6 months, depression sets in. Insomnia. Extreme paranoia. Then hallucinations. I have not slept in weeks due to these non-existing inmates beating on the walls and hollering all night. In September 2013, a prisoner hanged himself in his cell after spending more than a decade at ADX. It's a tomb. A mausoleum. People are there to die. Inmates scream. Bang on the walls. Mutilate their bodies. Swallow razors. Carry on conversations with voices no one else can hear. One inmate spent 6 years languishing in his own feces. After 5 years, I could finally see the sky. I was hugging other inmates. Usually motherfuckers don't want to go near other motherfuckers after they've been inside. 5 years of isolation nearly broke him. But there is a place where conditions are even worse. H unit. Where isolation goes beyond isolation. Where even protests are controlled. Where inmates are force-fed. where communication is monitored, where relief feels like a dog seeing a leash. Entire days go by with no words at all. Psychological torture. Total isolation to break me psychologically. By 2012, ADX wasn't just isolating dangerous criminals. It was driving men insane. And keeping them there anyway. The settlement changed policies. But it didn't change the fundamental question. Should a facility like ADX exist at all? Because the damage doesn't just go away. Men leave ADX unprepared, mentally fractured. Some commit violence. Others live in constant fear. Every time a door opens, they prepare to fight for their lives. Federal officials still haven't studied how long-term isolation affects those subjected to it, or whether it actually works. It costs $78,000 per year per inmate to house them in psychologically devastating conditions. And there are men who have been there for over 20 years. Men who followed every rule, who had clean conduct records for decades. And they're still there, not because they're dangerous, but because of what they did before they ever arrived.